Um, can we do see this? Should we continue? Okay, fine. So the next candidate is very interesting and very. So, okay. So I will announce now Mr. Devlin. Yeah. Not Devlin. Greimler, genau. Danke. Who knows something about exoskeletons? You? Okay, one person? Someone else? Yeah, you as well. The first time I think I was having a meeting with Gregor a couple of years ago, the co-founder, yeah, and found out the story of the exoskeletons, how they work, and I was also even trying to planning to try them out at some point of time, helping people with physical disabilities again to walk. At some point of time, I watched some videos, and it was really for me personally moving, yeah, to see that some people with disabilities being able to walk. I think you have been collecting data, products around, let's say, that innovation from a data point of view as well, and we're very thrilled to have you today here. And the stage is yours. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, my name is Gernot Greimler. I'm from the company Tech2People, CTO and one of the managing directors of the company. And as introduced, we are working with data from exoskeletons and more data. What this means, I'm going to tell you in the next 20 minutes. So maybe very short introduction about me. I come from deep countryside Austria. I worked in banking and obviously telco, so that leads directly to exoskeletons. So basically the common thing in everything is data. I've been working as a database developer and around databases ever since I started working. And in 2021, yes, I got approached, or basically I applied at Tech2People to help them with my knowledge in a discipline I know zero about. Did know zero about back then, now I know a lot more. So what are we doing actually? We are helping people to learn movement again in all kinds of aspects with robotic devices. We do not build robotic devices, we buy them, we use them, and we are trying to utilize the data of them. Tech2People has been founded in 2018, so a few years before I started there. It is located currently at Göttlicher Heiland in Hitzing. And it's, I still mix up the distance here. We use several high-tech robotics to help people to regain abilities after they had neurological disease like stroke or multiple sclerosis, and help people to learn to live with the impairments left from the disease. And since 2021, we are working on improving therapy by using the data out of the devices and other data. So maybe for the basics, what is robotic therapy even, and why do you use that? I think if you think of people having a stroke and learning to walk again, you have these images in your head where you have a parallel bar and someone is like heavily leaning on them, and you have 2 or 3 therapists trying to move the legs of the patient forward to recreate some movement that you would be able to do, or you were able to do before you had the stroke. We are using an exoskeleton for this, as a lot of it comes down to basic repetition rate, to basically doing more. Training more is usually good for you. This is not a very scientific approach. Of course, there is a lot of studies around this, and the general idea is a high repetition rate, and also the added comfort of being able to stand up and to be on eye level again, especially for paraplegic people, is a lot of added value also on psychological factors. You can see it in our patients on everyday life. They are really coming in, they enjoy walking for an hour, doing 1,000 or maybe 2,000 steps, where in traditional therapy you would be able to do 50 or 100. And this is only the lower extremities. We also do things for upper extremities. Generally, as Luke mentioned already, it's for stroke victims. Our founder, Gregor, you mentioned him earlier, is a paraplegic. He went on Matura-Reise, jumped into a pool and woke up in a hospital, never to walk again in his life. So this triggered him to found the company. So how does this look like? I hope this plays. So this is from Göttlicher Heiland, where we are currently located. In autumn, we're going to move to Erste Bank with the new therapy center. You can see the exoskeleton being attached to one of the patients, and the batteries here on the back, together with some motors on your hip and on your knees, are helping you to recreate a gait cycle that is as close as possible to normal walking, whatever normal walking means. I'm very happy no therapists are here to correct me on all my shortcomings I mentioned here. Yeah, as you can see, Philip is one of our patients. He's coming in once every week, as far as I know, and he's trying to exercise really regularly, and we use the devices to help him. Yes. So that is not the only thing we are having. There is also other robotic devices, because if you're hit by one of those neurological diseases, it's not only always walking that you lose the ability to do, and it really depends on what your goal in life is, what you want to do. There is devices, as you can see on the right bottom, to help you, for example, with the movement from the shoulders onwards on the upper extremities. There is also something for fingers to really learn gripping again, where you can switch on and off singular fingers to only train them. It's a basic idea is you have magnets on your fingers, like with a plaster, and you put them on some sort of sledge, and it's pulling your fingers that you cannot actively move, but letting free the fingers that you can move, so you can try gripping things like a glass or a sponge if you want to wash yourself. So, why do you guys care about this, and why am I even here? What does this have to do with any of the topics today? The general idea is this is all about data. All of these things create a myriad of very high frequency data that the idea of Gregor was to use and to maybe predict things or maybe learn things from it. So just for examples, I've noted a few things of the devices we're actively using that we gather the data from. You have the exoskeleton as our flagship device we're using that delivers data in 50 Hertz, 50 times per second. You get the motor performance from hip and knee angles, you get the angle degrees of hip and knees, and you have pressure sensors. You have pressure sensors in the soles, so you're trading a lot of data per se already. We have for other devices like the one from Tyromotion, which is an Austrian-based company that makes a lot of devices for people with these kind of impairments. We also get the motor performance, training durations, which exercises they did. The most famous exercise in the middle device is, by the way, hanging up clothes. So there is a game and people just sit there and try to hang up their freshly washed clothes on the screen. On the left top you can see the device I was mentioning with the fingers, which delivers for every finger, every position in a very high frequency. Including what we attach is a pulse measurement, we get oxygen saturation, and we use blood pressure measurements. So if you take all of this together, something should shake loose, but it's missing a very big topic. And this is, what does the therapist see? We have trained professionals with an education that goes anywhere between 3, 4, 5 years, depends on how fast you are and motivated and other things. That look at you and make assessments with the patients, and this kind of information is lacking in the systems. You cannot just take sensor data. You need to understand who is standing in front of you. If you had a stroke, and I hope no one of you had or ever will, but the point is, a stroke can be one-sided, both-sided. It can be impairing different body parts to a different degree. So a stroke is never a stroke. You need to understand what are you actually treating. And this starts even a step before that. When a patient comes, they wanna do something again that they did before. Like, I wanna be able to wash myself on my own. And you need to break that down. What are the things keeping you from doing it? Can you not break the sponge? Can you not transfer yourself into a bathtub? What are the underlying structures in your body keeping you from arriving and achieving your activity of daily living? We are using a standard from the World Health Organization. It's called the International Classification for Functions and Disabilities, and codifying this information and basically labeling a bunch of data about the patients. So diagnosis is one step, but really the impairment is the other. Of course, it needs patient feedback. If a patient says, I didn't arrive at my goal, you can measure whatever you want. You walk faster, you breathe faster or harder. If the patient says they didn't achieve their goal, they didn't achieve their goal. And of course, you need the diagnosis, the appointment calendar for repetition. So there's a lot of things to be gathered, as opposed to how things are done nowadays. Because today, therapists capture this data, if even on a pad with handwriting, or maybe in a small system with free text, and none of this would help any of the, hopefully, many data scientists that are here today. So having all of this data, and this is now about the idea, and we're in the middle of a research project. The idea is we gather all this data, we synchronize and fusion this data, and then create a digital twin out of it. To use then, if you overlay over hundreds or even thousands of patients, to be able to benchmark or predict even outcomes based on how the patient arrived and how their assessments in terms of what are their settings at the beginning of the therapy are and what is possible for them. And the general idea, and this is where we are, is then at the end, maybe use a machine learning approach, but for the moment, this is the thing that a therapist does inherently. Basically, if a therapist looks at you and measures all these impairments, they come up with a therapy plan. Can they explain in a decision tree how they come up with it? I don't think so. They just do what they think is best. And this works more than it doesn't. Well, at least we think so, because none of this is measured right now. The whole field of therapy is in dire need of some data-driven improvements. The textbooks that are used in therapy are not necessarily the newest, and a lot of the outcome measures used in it are done on studies of 50, maybe 100 patients. None of this is longitudinal. So, arriving at today, what are we working on? We are at step one. Today we heard a lot about data engineering being the boring part, but also the ultimately very necessary part, because crap in, crap out. If you don't measure the right things, if you don't ensure the things are good, what are you even predicting? And here we can go a bit into depth. It is very confusing. I just brought with me the architecture slide with some icons on it. The point here is data engineering is actually really hard, and I think some of you have an idea about it. If you think you go to an exoskeleton and just go like, yeah, just give me the data, I mean, how hard can it be? The first recommendation was to run with a laptop next to the exoskeleton because no one thought of that. So what we did is we attached a Raspberry Pi and an Accu pack, and just let it record the data to blob storage and so on. Just seeing all the devices on the top, they are all integrated. They are UDP listeners on a network. copying out database files from a local Windows machine and then hosting it somewhere in a Docker environment. A local text file with daily about a gigabyte that you need to copy out from a Windows machine, web scraping, and Bluetooth connectors. We've built all of that. We've synced all of that. We integrated it with the information system about which patient, which impairment comes here, and we built, and this is on the right side, what I mentioned earlier, an international standard-based app that is for therapists to help classify a patient. We're going to release this app later this year in September, of course to a therapist audience, because while I could use it by now, I think I shouldn't. It's an expert app. They will look at you, they know how to do the right assessments. This was a lot of work. There's a lot of things regarding integrating all of this, syncing the data on the right timestamp, because if you're doing the left step and you get sensor data from one machine, you also want to get the same data from your pulse measure, from anything else that you want to correlate with in the same timestamp. This goes as far as hosting our own network time service. So we're really sure about things. Yeah, and then on integration, I think the lower you get, the more the data scientists might feel at home again. There is a Databricks icon. We are partnering with researchers from Research Studio Austria. They are only getting fully anonymous data. They're getting sensor data, maybe some, how do you call it, age group. The person is living generally in the east of Austria. No addresses, just general indicators. And they are currently working on trying to find indicators. So the development cycle as it goes right now is therapists are going an exoskeleton session with the patient and recording all this data. And what we do is we push back information about the gait cycles, the deviations of each step, the own contribution of a patient, because if a motor is involved, we want to know how much did the patient do, how much did the device do. Because the first indicator would be motor does less, patient does more, should be good. So we are trying to hunt for this information together with all the feelings surrounding is my therapy good. And we build up dashboards for this regard, and the goals are, and this is the next slide, phase one, you need documentation, you need labeling. I think most of successful, or most of the AI that I know about and that is successful has mass labeled data. And what we are creating here is mass labeling data. We need to understand how a therapist thinks and what they did based on that data, to then abstract it into digital twin and to do modeling and to find a formula that basically says therapy success is a number. Or a bunch of numbers. It's never going to be one number because as the IQ is, well, not really reliable as a measure, an ability quotient as one number never will be either. And then, in the last step, and this is something we've yet to prove, is can we reproduce the best therapist in terms of a software? Can we find what they are thinking? And can we prove that this is actually working for each kind of patient, that's the word. We're also extending. We are each month having more and more patients because we are running our own therapy center. We're working together between therapists. We have a doctor of neurology on board. We have data scientists and data engineers together, and we have wild workshops where there are so many questions that start with, sorry if that's a stupid question, and then there's question follows. This is what needs to happen for data engineering to get the right data to the researcher. For the researcher, of course, because what are you going to predict if you don't understand the base problem? And for the therapists, because when we started this, they wanted to capture even more data. Then we let them capture even more data, and then they say, this is too much work. So you need a really very short closed loop to find out what's the sweet spot to get as much reliable data without boring everyone to death. Yeah, I I think that's about it. We're getting more devices. We're going to open a new therapy center in Seestadt Aspern in September or October. And we are gathering more and more data to hopefully the next time we're going to speak, tell you more about the parts after the data engineering that is more about science and predicting things. We are looking currently for someone in business development and on and off for people helping us in either data science or data engineering. If you're interested, please get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think it's so inspiring on so many levels, also for me as a personal level, to see that there are projects that are making kind of a data product out of a hardware thingy that was not there before. Yeah? At least in Central European surroundings, I think this was one of the first initiatives in that direction. So also having data engineering as one of the biggest challenges at the beginning, I think it just shows how much we are like overlapping in that. So it's not, it might in the first look a bit different as a topic, but in its core, it's a big data challenge that we have to tackle. So any questions in the audience?